Hey there! Have you joined our 30-day Simply Stories challenge yet? It's been going on for the month of October, but you can still hop in. Here's what participants are saying. I'd love to use stories for community building, so this idea feels perfect. This feels right for what I'm feeling lately. Plus, I know I need to use them, but I'm terrible at remembering to show up on stories. So this will be great practice. And I'm all for not playing their game. Talking about the gurus. If you're tired of jumping through all the Insta hoops and ready to fall in love with Instagram again, or at least like, our story challenge is the perfect fit. And here's a tip. This challenge is way more than just a story challenge. It will give you content going forward. Tap the link in our show notes to join and get your immediate download of 5 ways non-followers can find you through stories. And since we're talking about stories so much this month, this episode is an AOM rewind from spring of 2021, episode 37, which gives you great insight into not only the mechanics of stories, but how and what to share in them. I have a wrap up for some of these tips, so stick around till the end to hear my update. And now, listen in.
Welcome to Authentic Online Marketing with Ruthie Gray. Growing awareness for your blog, podcast, book, or product involves more than dancing to reels and yelling, "Buy my thing." This show models quality over clamor so you can put your spin on your message and market in a way that feels authentic to you, because nobody wants to sound like an infomercial. And now, here's your host, Ruthie Gray.
So the goal with stories is to generate engagement and create your own community. This is how I have built community. And y'all know I'm always saying community grows opportunity. And it's true. And I've grown it in stories. Stories is where you make the connections, the real life connections. And this is where you grow diehard followers. The secret to gaining engaged Instagram followers is through stories. So remember how your mom read you stories as a kid and you got all sucked into the story? Or even, like I love reading historical fiction and I will just get so sucked in. That is a story. It's a real story. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I come to know those characters in that story and in that book. Same for you. It's the same for your followers. If you learn to do stories right and regularly, you can get your audience sucked in, which means more podcast downloads and an engaged audience. So today you're going to learn what you need for stories, how often to create stories, and how to get engagement from your stories. First of all, I want to go over what you need for stories. You don't need anything special to shoot your stories. All you need is your iPhone and the Instagram app. Go to stories and start shooting, start experimenting. That's how I started. That's how I started really gaining traction on Instagram. There is no special equipment that you need. Just get on the app. So let's talk about these 7 tips for how to drive traffic from stories. The first thing you need to know is stories are a great way to practice doing video for your audience in 15-second frames. So I'm always telling my people, my followers, my podcast listeners, my people inside my membership, my insider membership, the people that receive my insider newsletter, my coaching clients, you need to be using video on Instagram. All the forms, stories, reels, IGTV, and live video. If you want to get started doing that, the best way to do it is to practice in stories. Turn the camera around to you and talk into the camera, talk to it for 15 seconds, because that's as long as a story frame is. And here's the great news. it's not real time. So if you don't like what you see, you can delete. You can delete and delete and delete. And then until you get what you like, and then you can post. So the more you do that, the more you get used to it. But the other thing is with this first point, you can start showing your face in stories, and it's not near as scary because you can delete. So start, yes, video things that aren't, like video what you're doing or outside or your street or your bike or your backyard or your dog or whatever, but also show you, because people are going to get sucked into your story the more they get to know the character of the story. See how that works? Number 2, another way you can drive traffic to your podcast from stories is to do behind the scenes. So for instance, you can show your mic. You can show, I did a story video of all of the cords that were sticking out of my PC, adjoining my mic and my headphones and all that stuff. It was a real mess. You can show your taping software. You can show steps for how you tape or how you gather your information. You can show behind the scenes of actually interviewing your guest, and you can take a story while you're doing that. I've done that with guests. They've done that with me. So just giving them little peeks of behind the scenes of how you do your podcast, how you film it and log it and gather the notes and all that. But you can use behind the scenes as part of your life too. You don't only podcast. That's not all you do in your life. So you can show other things, like maybe you're a caregiver like me, sitting in doctor's offices a lot of the time. People have come to know me that way. My peers that are looking for Instagram guidance found me that way because this is our stage of life, caregiving. So maybe it's that, maybe it's parenting, maybe it's gardening, maybe it's sports. Show what you do other than your job too, for behind the scenes, other than your podcasting. Your podcasting might not be your job. Number 3, share your life, like I said, but use engagement stickers. So you want to share you, yes, but your IG account is about delivering value to your followers and your listeners, just like your podcast. So what you can do is you can poll them. Let's say you are a gardener and you show your garden, or maybe you have ferns or maybe greenery or a certain type of flower, and you can do a poll and say, do you garden? Yes or no. That's simple enough. And then you can develop a rapport that way. You can take it farther. If you get a lot of interaction on that, you could take it farther and say, what kind of plants do you like? Annuals or perennials? And you can pop those words in the poll instead of just yes or no. Coffee or tea, trees or flowers, bike or motorcycle. Things of that nature. This is where the intersection of your life and your followers' lives comes in. And then you get a read on what their interests are too. And then that way you can share more or less of that certain thing. So engagement stickers are polls, the question box stickers, the slider with the heart eyes, and also the quizzes. You can do quizzes too. Something I like to do, and here's an extra tip, something I like to do with my podcast after I've shared it is slap a quiz up there and write 3 things that are wrong and say something at the top like, in today's Instagram Insider Hacks podcast, we learned that, and then I'll list A, B, and C that are sort of true, but not really. And then D be the real answer or something like that. So that you can know, you can generate, first of all, curiosity with that quiz. And then secondly, get a read on who is listening and find out what their thoughts are about whatever your podcast was or your expertise. So use engagement stickers. Now, number 4, you can tag people in stories when it makes sense. So let's say you interviewed another podcaster. You'll want to share their Instagram. So what you want to do is you're promoting your podcast, you share it, and hopefully they will share it. And if they share it in their stories, then ask them to tag you. And then that way you can share their story to your story, because you can't really share other people's stories unless they tag you, unless you do like a screenshot. You can do that. But it's nicer if they tag you, because then their people see your name and they may, tap that sticker with your handle and come visit you on your profile. So they share you, you share them and tag them, go the extra mile and put that tag sticker on there so that they get exposure too. It's really good to share other people's work. So maybe you're the person that you interviewed, they have their own account, and you just want to generate more sense of community and we're in this together, we're colleagues. Just share one of their episodes sometime to your stories and tag them. They'll love that. The more you share of others' content, the more you develop a trust with them, we're in this together kind of mentality. And people love that. And before you know it, you'll really develop a strong community. And as we know, community grows opportunity. Number 5, use hashtags in your stories. Now, don't shrink them too small. It's okay if people see your hashtags, because the Instagram bots or whatever that read the hashtags won't be able to read them if they're shrunk too small. So you can use generalized hashtags that are in the millions for hashtag hubs, such as basketball, baseball, Christmas, Advent, your state, Florida, Wisconsin, whatever. Use those big, broad hashtags, and you can use 1 to 3. I wouldn't advise more than that, because you are pretty much wasting your time, but that will give you a little bit of exposure there too. Hashtag the word podcast too, podcasters of Instagram, and see what happens. You may show up in that hashtag hubs story for more exposure. One of the best ways to do this is to hashtag, like I said before, your state or your area. I get a lot of exposure when I hashtag our area that we live in Florida. And I'll show up in those beaches hashtag hubs. So I would encourage you to try that too. Number 6, share stories 5 days a week. 5 days. They're not hard. Here's the thing. The more you share your life and stories, the more people get to know you. And the more you share engagement stickers, the more you get to know them. So there's got to be a time to be able to do that. So let's say you're sharing yourself 5 days a week, you're sharing in stories, then 2 to 3 out of those 5 days should have engagement stickers with them. So stories don't have to be long. You don't have to do a lot of them, but transitioning into number 7, a story is 3 frames or more, but at least 3. It's a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a story, remember, and you're the character. It's featuring you, but it's also featuring your follower. You're building a connection, and you're finding the intersection of your likes and dislikes and goals, and you're building a community. An easy way to share your story is on the days that you have posts in your feed, then you just share that feed post. You just hit that airplane underneath your feed post and share it to stories, and then just expound on it. Talk about it for 15 seconds while you have your camera on your face, and take another picture of your subject or your podcast, or upload a picture of your podcast, or of use a software that Headliner or something like that, that shares your voice on the podcast. and upload that. And then there is your 3 frames. A lot of times I'll say, I'll do that. And then I'll do a 4th frame and ask a question. Say, did you listen to the podcast? Yes or no? More times than not, more often than not, there are way more yeses than nos, because people are invested in my podcast because they're invested in me, because they've come to know, like, and trust me through stories. In conclusion, I get steady traffic from stories, which translates into regular podcast downloads because I, A, share my life, B, I ask about their lives through engagement stickers. There are lots of conversations that go on beyond those engagement stickers, actually. Lots of conversations in the DM, but that's where it starts. C, I share their answers and tag them sometimes if they're not, anything private. Like last weekend, I said, this is what I'm doing. What are you doing? Use the question box, and they shared that. And so I shared their answers. I screenshotted their replies and I tagged them. That's just a simple thing. They love that. They love the shout outs, and I love recognizing them because they are loyal followers. And then D, I use the different video aspects afforded to me in stories, like boomerangs and the different filters. And sometimes I talk and film for that 15-second frame, and sometimes I just upload a picture. I want to give you one last ninja tip, which goes along with the tip that I gave about if you upload some audio from your podcast, make sure that you tap to add text and type in a little bit of text to go along with it, because not everyone always has their audio on for stories. This way, people are able to read it quickly and see what you're talking about and see whether they want to tap in, or at least they're tracking. So always go that extra step and add some text in there along with your audio.
So, did I motivate you to brush up on your story skills? I hope so. Some of my favorite followers and clients meet me in stories on the daily. 2 things I want to update you on, though, are don't spend tons of time on hashtags in stories, because in the past few months, we've noticed a shift more to where showing up in hashtag hubs in stories isn't so much a trend, but location hubs are. So use the geotag more frequently in your stories when you can, because you can be seen in those story hubs and possibly get new eyes on your content and new followers. Another update since this recording is the caption sticker is now available in stories, so you don't have to type out your text like I advised anymore. Easy button. Now, I want you to do one of 2 things. Either snap a photo of this episode and share it in your story and tag me, or join the 30-day story challenge by clicking the link in our show notes. You'll get a plan of action for the next 30 days and the gratification of knowing that you're working on something that will make a difference in growing your community and generating content going forward. Until next time, remember to share your unique message your way in your own authentic voice.